the beautiful and peaceful Appalachians. It didn't used to be this way. Back in the days when the frontier, this was rugged, inhospitable country. And this is just some of the stories of the people and the legends that come into this country. The most popular. And the old gun that they settled this country with, the Kentucky long rifle. So here's a story of just a few of the most famous of these people, and what they used, how they hunted, and how they learned. Of course, this is a Native American land. The Cherokee, the Shawnee, in these mountains in the central parts of the Appalachians. And they resented the white man even being here. Now, the first people in these old mountains, from the east into these rugged mountains, was the long hunters. There were a lot of them, I'd say, exploring, hunting for game and land. And they worked these mountains everywhere. But the most famous of them was Daniel Boone. And he was with these long hunters too. This is how he learned this country. And he loved this country with all of his heart. All the game in it, just boundless game, elk, bear, of any kind in this vast country. And he passed through this gateway many a time exploring this country. This is Cumberland Gap. And Daniel spent a lot of time in this old place by himself for a year or two, just exploring all around the Cumberland Valley, Tennessee Valley, up into Kentucky, up into the beautiful bluegrass land. And he met a lot of Native Americans. They were the first people here. This was their hunting grounds too. He made friends with a lot of them, but a lot of them he didn't. They resented the white man being in their land, so a lot of conflict ensued. And they used rifles like this, the Kentucky long rifles. These rifles are usually made by Pennsylvania gun makers, but they called them Kentucky long rifles. They had 44-inch or longer barrels on them, and they used flintlocks to start out with before the percussion caps come out. And they look like this. This is how they worked. You had a piece of flint come down to where the powder was in the pan, and it would strike and make an arc, and it'd go into the barrel and ignite the charge. And they were real accurate guns too, rifled barrels. Now these Kentucky long rifles, they was average shooting about 100 yards up to 200 yards, where a musket couldn't get 100 yards if it was lucky. Now, if somebody knowed their gun real good, they could get even stories that say they get up to 300 yards out of these Kentucky long rifles. So they could outshoot the enemy when they was on the battlefield by hundreds of yards. Now, he made his way famous into the Wilderness Road and started selling this country, and so did a lot of other famous names. But he's the most popular of all of them here into the Kentucky wilderness, the dark and bloody ground. Now just to the south of him, in East Tennessee, North Carolina, if the Revolutionary War was going on, and William Campbell and John Sevier had their little ragtag mountain men, they called them, over the mountain men. And they was trying to stop the British. The war wasn't going too good for the Patriots at the time. So they was going to try to stop Cornwallis from getting into their part of the woods. This is Cornwallis. He's the general of the Southern armies of the British during the Revolutionary War. And his right guard was Patrick Ferguson. Well, these mountain men met up with him on a place called King's Mountain, and they defeated him. He bragged that nobody could ever drag him off that mountain. Well, they defeated him, and they buried him there. Now back into Kentucky, Daniel Boone. Kentucky finally became a state in 1792. A lot of hostilities here in this struggle for Kentucky. But old Daniel Boone, not like most of these pioneers and these frontiersmen, he lived to be an old man. And he lived in Kentucky, West Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, even in Missouri. But he lived to be an old man. And his exploits as a marksman and a hunter is legendary. So he'll never be forgotten. Now here's one of the most famous legends of these Appalachias, especially here in East Tennessee, Davy Crockett. And the state of Texas loves him even more. But he'll never be forgotten here in East Tennessee. He is legendary. His name is larger than life. All the stories that's been told, all the history that he's made. He was born around Greenville, Greene County, Tennessee, in 1786. And as a young man, he loved to explore these mountains and hunt. And he hunted them everywhere. And back around the early 1820s, the Kentucky long rifle, they'd come out with a percussion cap. This is a great improvement over powder in a little old pan there, where it's bad to get wet and all that stuff. It just draw moisture, misfire many a time. If you used an old black powder, I know it's misfired on me a few times. But old Davy, the country he's seen back then, wild country in these mountains of East Tennessee, and he was a great bear hunter. He loved to hunt bear all his life. That was one of the things he really loved to do when he hunted. And all the game he's seen in these mountains, the beautiful country, as he hunted, explored, just the legend of it. Now here's his old rifle, Betsy, that he used before he went into politics and went out west. It didn't go out west with him. Here it is in the museum. Old Betsy, 40 caliber. Now I was lucky enough to find a replica of old Betsy at the museum, Davy Crockett's Museum and Tavern in Morristown, Tennessee. And I put this in my hands and aimed around, played with it, filmed it, and it just seemed so natural to me. You could just sit there and hold it forever. It being an old heavy gun, but it just seemed so natural, so easy to aim and hold on a target. I thought that was so beautiful. Nice gun. Well, they made the old musket balls for these black powders. They put lead in a kettle and hold it over fire and melt it down. And when it become molded, they would pour it in their molds of whatever caliber they got. Now most of these Kentucky long rifles, they come from a 25 caliber up to a 30, a 40 caliber, all the way up to a 50. But this is what they look like, and this is the musket ball. I found these metal detected out in these old Tennessee ridges. And you'll wonder, well, how you know it's a musket ball? Well, if you look around on them, they'll be where they've been cut off and pinched off at where they've been poured. like this right here. You see that little place? That's where they've been poured and pinched off in their molds. So you know it's an old musket ball. So there's a lot of history in these old ridges. Now, old Davy, we know what happened to old Davy. He went out of politics. He went to Texas and died serving his country at the Alamo. But he'll never be forgotten. He's East Tennessee's favorite child. Now, old Davy and old Daniel Boone, these were legends here in southeast, in Kentucky, eastern Tennessee, North Carolina, even in West Virginia, legends. They'll never be forgotten. Now, they used these old Kentucky long rifles way up into the middle of the 1900s, and they still use them today as collectors and certain hunts. But here's some old rifles out of these mountains. Them is some large barrel rifles. And they was good at them too. They was good using. These mountain people, they learned from a young age how to use these guns. And this was their livelihood in these mountains. Now, if you come out of these mountains as a young man, you know what I'm talking about. Your elders, your parents, especially your dad, would teach you at a young age how to hunt, how to get started. And it was a little slow process, but it come natural to you. And before long, you was out hunting on your own. How to put meat on the table for the family. Back in the hard times of the Depression on, this is what you had to do. Didn't have nothing else. You could eat. And they hunted back in these mountains. The gun was usually larger, the rifle was usually larger than the kid was. But they learned to use them. They learned to hunt these squirrels, put meat on the table. They were a good protein. Woods is full of this evidence. Nothing better than a good old pan of fried squirrels. Good eating when hard times. Good eating, I'm telling you. If you've not tried it, you don't know what you're missing. Now, these old country boys, over time, they learn how to steal hunt, slip around, follow tracks, sign. Always stay downwind. They know. They learn this stuff over time. And they were stealthy in these woods. And everybody could shoot in these mountains. They just learned to. About everybody can shoot. Some can shoot better than others. And a lot of them are real good shots. But every once in a while, there's somebody that has that special gift that could really shoot. And they had their ways of shooting too. And one such person was Alvin York, an old country boy up here around Fentress County and Pall Mall, Tennessee. He growed up in these mountains. And he was just an old country boy that had to do his duty for his country. And he was distinguished service, Medal of Honor winner, all kinds of medals for what he'd done. An old Tennessee boy. Now here he's depicted in a movie played by Gary Cooper in a 1941 movie, Sergeant York. It depicts how the mountain people is. This is a real movie if you've never seen it. And they get in these old shooting matches with these old Kentucky rifles, and they can do some shooting. These were accurate guns. If you've not seen this movie, you'd be tickled to see it. They draw down on these little old turkeys and stuff way off these turkey shoots with rifles.
You got me!
It surprised you. When he got in the military, they thought he was just a conscientious objector because he didn't want to fight. But he didn't care to fight. He was just a religious man that believed in the Bible. But when they got him on the firing line, they figured out that he knowed what he was doing.
What are you wetting that front sight for? Why, it kind of cuts down the haze. I always wet my sights when I'm fixing to do some shooting. Okay, do some shooting. Bullseye, dead center.
So, after that, he had his own squad. He was a corporal. But he went overseas, and that's where the real action was. His unit was in the Meuse Argonne Offensive, and they was taking heavy casualties, and they was pinned down, and he single-handedly went around and stopped 3 machine gun nests and captured over 100-something Germans. Single-handedly. The Lord watched over him. So he really done his duty, and he moved with pride to these mountains. But he come back home and lived a peaceful life. Now, I hope you enjoyed these little stories. There's so many legends and heroes in these mountains that this is just a few. And if you like these old stories, I can share more with you. So, I want to thank you for watching. God bless. Keep your powder dry, and I'll see you next time.